Hi, happy Easter celebration, and I wanted to talk about another fragrance and fragrance note group, which are raisins. So resinous note is something that is often used together with other woody notes, with florals, creating compositions. And a resinous note itself creates an extra depth, extra spiciness, sweetness, and interesting character to the fragrance. And of course, in French perfumery, you will see a lot that resinous and resinous notes aren't necessarily used always, and simply red florals and white florals are combined. But overall, especially in Arab perfumery, in niche perfumes, you will almost always see resinous notes in the fragrances because it does add extra character. And for example, sugary, powdery, vanilla, fruity, and also dry labdanum notes, and many other notes would be created using these resins. And in essence, the resin is a tree sap that has been collected, and it has either fermented or simply solidified, and thus creating an interesting scent, interesting fragrance, and a thicker paste that of course can be created into a perfume. And talking about of course the history of perfumes and also resin use in Egypt, ancient Egypt, Cyprus, and Mesopotamia, Imperial Rome. So in those periods, historically, also resins were used in fragrances, even in the first perfume creation workshops or mini, so to say, factories. And talking about resinous notes, of course, quite a lot of different resins historically have been incorporated in incense, for example, frankincense, labdanum, myrrh, either used for religious purposes or simply on their own in beauty and also fragrance use, for example, incorporating them in fragrance oils. And for instance, also pine, fir resins would be used quite often also nowadays in male fragrances, but synthetic notes would be preferred typically, while, for example, for frankincense, labdanum, myrrh, the natural origin ingredients, even though they're pretty expensive, would be typically resourced. Of course, some IFRA regulations in EU would limit use, for example, on the particular fragrance aspects, such as the oak moss, that would be combined with other ingredients such as tree sap and resin, and thus, of course, it would mean that some synthetic fragrances would be used instead. But in general, I'm talking about the fragrance and fragrance resin notes typically. So for these two groups, either natural or the synthetic ingredient would be preferred. And in essence, the probably one of my favorite resin outcome would be the balsamic note quality of the resin in fragrance. So it would be a very rich, almost flavorful scent, and it adds extra warmth, extra depth, extra creaminess, so to say, for the specific fragrance, and thus for niche quality fragrances, definitely something that is wonderful to use. And also, talking about resin fragrances and fragrance notes in detail, for example, benzoin note in fragrance or the friar's balm of Storax, depending on the perfume company referring to this particular scent note, would have a rich, sweet fragrance, more vanilla, creamy, and darker kind of smell. And it's extracted from the bark of Styrax trees, so of course more on the south and Arabic world. And also for example, Kafathu balm, which is a fragrant resin accumulated within the tropical tree cavity. Also, this particular note is something that is also quite often used, especially niche perfumers. And frankincense, which is both used as an incense, also for religious purposes, and even in Arabic countries, this would be used as a more or less medicinal, chewable quality, almost candy-like medicine. So to say, in traditional country medicine, but it's also a fragrance note, which is basically created by extracting the frankincense resin. And it is originating from Africa, India, Middle East, so warmer regions, warmer countries. And it is extracted from the boswellia tree. Another resin that originates from a natural source and can be used both as an incense and both as a perfume when you incorporate the note in the fragrance. And galbanum, green, bitter, woody, balsamic note, also gum extracted from certain Asian aromatic flowering plants. Incense itself, for example, originating from the gray bark of the trunk or boswellia tree, also is something that would be used. And one of my favorites from the resin group of the fragrances is the labdanum, which derives from the cistus plant, which is known as the rock rose, and also is very, very often used together with oud note and oud wood, and creating this beautiful, rich, spicy, almost cool tone, but very, very heavy, deep fragrance profile. And of course, in Middle East, this is quite frequently used also in Arabic perfumes, and myrrh. Of course, both in the Christian culture, myrrh is something that was traditionally used in the church, but in addition to the incense use of this particular fragrance note, it predates in the ancient Greece, and also the tree itself could be separated in different species, up to 200 different species of myrrh, and only 3 are used in the perfumery, which is Commiphora niis, Abyssinia, and Chimperi. So itself, the myrrh is composed of 60% gum, approximately 30% resin, and essence, plus some bitter notes. And for instance, styrax also is similar to benzoin, and originates also in Syria and Africa. And it is fragrant of vanilla, floral, leathery, milky scent, and it is also derived from 2 species of trees, active, of course, in more southern countries and regions, so Asia, Africa, and so forth. And tolo balsam, white pine, and fir raisins. And of course, all of these are combined into a unique fragrance. Multiple resins can be also used, and also when talking about a specific resin note itself, of course, the different perfumeries, perfumes, and perfume houses can use different either fully synthetic, partially synthetic, or fully natural or ingredients. And for example, Amber Sultan by Serge Lutens also uses resin notes, and as it is Arabic inspired and launched in the 90s, it is a fragrance using resins in general, so not all perfume houses will note separately resin notes, but will just note resin. And myrrh, benzoin, and combined with amber, with different green notes, vanilla, and thus beautiful Arabic style fragrance is created. And talking about resins and balms itself, this could be attributed to the Oriental family of scents, and of course different versatile resins, either more frequently used or less, are existent. So, for example, copaiba balm, labdanum, myrrh, opoponax. These are more frequently used resins, but there are options such as the pine tar, Peru balsam, styrax, of course, different incense notes and incenses of, for example, Japanese incense, copal, Gurion balsam, cade oil, and birch tar. So many options are available, but in essence, this adds a rich creaminess, typically darker vanilla or green fragrance notes. And of course, for pine origin trees, resins would be more on the piney base. And for leaf trees, these of course differ to a warmer, creamier, darker fragrance profile, but overall resins and balsams are definitely a significant part of the niche perfumes, and also of course in Arab perfumes these will also be very often met and used, and also for fragrances originating in, for example, south of Italy, fragrance style, and this would also be something normally used. And it will often be combined with different florals to add some lightness to the balsamic or woody notes used in scent, and extra scent profile with either feminine or unisex or more masculine hinge, but of course it depends on the perfume house, and designer perfume houses will also use different resins, but more typically traditionally in male fragrances. But of course, it really depends on the scent itself. But most popular fragrances will use synthetic fragrance notes due to cost cutting, and also you will typically be able to see the resins and balsams in thus more masculine hinged notes, or niche perfumes more on the Arabic side or unisex side. For example, the Fahrenheit is a nice fragrance with more piney notes, woody notes, which is male scent, but at the same time it uses some resins too. So it adds just richness to the scent profile. So that's all today. Bye.